Hello again, this is Ukumbwa Sauti, and I hope you're able to hear the rich chorus of birds that are all around me right now. I'll just give it a few seconds here. I see some sparrows and red-winged blackbirds, some quiet geese and ducks right now, but there are a lot of birds singing, a lot of them around. And I think it's a really interesting connection maybe to make, with privilege, when we think of male privilege or white privilege, European settler privilege, to think about how privilege and unearned power kind of destroys the chorus of humanity, destroys the voices of the chorus of humanity, as these powers, these oppressions work upon people, work upon populations in the world. I think about, racial privilege, about white privilege, and about how that shuts down larger discourses about, how systemic racism works on, say, people of culture, bridge color, African people, black people, Asian people, indigenous people, folks from other countries. I'm in the United States settler colony right now, xenophobia and its relationship to racism. But, I think about how, these things just shut down, not, access to communications, access to healthcare, access to justice systems. Even if these systems were set up for justice, it would be hard-pressed to get full justice in them because of systemic racism, because of systemic patriarchy and male privilege. So part of our process here, as we look at things around social justice, is to really consider what that means for people. What does that mean for humanity? Because so many people are, taking time out of their day to simply, and I would say, remedially suggest that these kinds of privileges don't exist. And when people say that, they are basically saying that the oppressions don't exist, which is basically more harm and injury to already oppressed populations. We know this. And I think it's impingent upon these folks who are in these privileged populations, whether they be white people, whether they be men, cishet people, cis heterosexual people, to look at how their presence, how their identities, how their bodies are given privileges in a society that is based upon oppression, especially this one in the United States, the settler colony, or say, occupied Azania, South Africa, or many other places, could be in Canada, and could be in India, based upon, who is still colonizing, whether through neocolonialism or land theft, what kind of corporations, who are in these corporations who are controlling land, stealing resources, things like that. So we have to be able to look honestly and clearly and past our fragilities as people who are experiencing these privileges, which again, there's always this argument that, well, I had a hard life and so I can't have any white privilege, that's impossible, because I was poor. But people have to really realize, and they have to listen to people of color, they have to listen to African people who have been saying for such a long time that actually it's not your whiteness that created that problem. It's other issues, and it's whiteness or maleness that's the thing that did not create a situation of oppression for you. And that's why you are sitting in a position of privilege, why your voice might be heard more, why your images are on television, or your voicings are in animation or on podcasts and different things like that. Why your faces are on the boards of corporations, why you are owners of certain organizations, or why you have positions of power within companies, even nonprofit organizations, let alone capitalist organizations that are there to just get profits off of the people. But we have to be able to look at that. We have to be able to look beyond those fragile reactions that we have to, oh, well, that's not me. That couldn't be me. That couldn't be me that has this kind of privilege. And we have to be able to look into that mirror that oppressed people are showing us about who we are and what we are all about, and what kinds of things, like let's just say, the GI Bill after World War II that was created to help veterans of that war, gain homes, home ownership. And what that also means is land ownership, and how African people were locked out of that. We're locked out of not only particular neighborhoods, but locked out of the benefits that, say, the GI Bill was giving European settlers, was giving white people, in this system of white supremacy here. So, that's just one situation. Or we can look at all the organizations that are around us, and do we find, and I think we often find, that there are cishet men, that are at the heads of these organizations, that are running them or having their voices most heard and most empowered in these organizations. And, the situations in which, people of color and disabled people may be coming and going in these organizations because their needs are not being met, their voices are not being heard. So we have to look at how our organizations, how our nation, how our communities, even our families have negatively empowered privileges that are existing, situations of unearned power in our homes, in our neighborhoods, and in our communities. We have to be able to look at that. And particularly, we have to be able to listen to the voices of oppressed people who can speak with much more clarity, much more authority on how these systems affect people. And we have to realize, if we're part of these privileged populations, that when people do strike back and say, no, there's no such thing as white privilege or male privilege or cishet privilege, we have to be able to talk to the people in that population that share that identity and help them understand how we need to listen to the voices of the oppressed, and how we need to really be able to see beyond our own fragile selves and look at how these oppressions, how these systems and structures really affect people on the ground. We have to be able to listen and feel and move into compassion. I'd love to hear what you think about these things. And I know it's one of those hot button topics that actually should be really cool and really calm and really quiet, because it's really clear and it's really real. But what do you think? Let's talk.